Vandana Shiva, the Indian scholar and activist, ain't shy when it comes to digging out and heavily criticising Bill Gates, is she? In my conversation with her on my Luminary podcast, Under the Skin, we talked about the impact and power that Bill Gates and other tech giants have and the negative impact it's had on Indian agriculture and farming in general. And Vandana Shiva was very clear in her opinion this is a new wave of colonisation, every bit as potent and as destructive.
I wonder if in this revolution we will kill the smart people too.
Great or vast European empire.
Mine not so small, whatever could you mean? I wonder if in this revolution we will kill the smart people too. It's the guy from Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
In this brilliant conversation, Vandana Shiva talks about Bill Gates' power, the power that we have as the citizens of Earth, the subjects of Earth, the inhabitants of Earth, the, what do we want to call ourselves? The custodians of Earth. It's a very, very beautiful conversation from an incredibly powerful human being and a true leader in the necessary movement to reverse the dreadful actions that are currently taking place that are preventing us having access to our birthright and living in harmony with the planet and one another. Check it out.
And Russell, I think you'll have to do a lot of work in the next few years because they're going to do a lot of colonization in the name of sustainability. Just by chance, I was reading the rubbish in Bill Gates' new book. I normally don't read rubbish, but when they want to be rulers through rubbish, I read it. And it's lovely because he says the greenhouse gases from factory farms are not because of factory farms and putting animals in prisons, but it's because the cows were the problem. They had 4 stomachs. And the 4 stomachs make them emit methane. No, you walk behind a good cow on a grazing pasture, she's not stinking. Goes even further. Talk colonization. He has put the Indian plow that has existed for 10,000 years and says this primitive technology must go. I call this as the future technology of a partnership between our bodies, the body of the earth, and the body of the animals, realizing that we are not masters, but we are there to serve through what Gandhi called bread labor. The labor of our body in the service of
thank you for getting us here on Subject to Myth 1, continuing the gift of it that you receive from good stuff. Thank you.
Epic moment where everything wrong is being given a new life, just at the time where the world was waking up and say, oh, you know, this dissection doesn't work, lack of faith doesn't work, desacralization doesn't work. That's precisely when everything is being crushed again. And I think this is happening, Russell, because of us arrogance that we have created such immunity for ourselves. We've destroyed every international law. We've destroyed all democracy. We have locked people into fear. No one can hold us to account. I mean, look at the debate right now on the GMO question.
Hi, Depressed Kitten. How are you doing?
Where we created laws on GMO regulation and they want to knock it down. And Bill Gates, again, is financing the lobbies for that deregulation. So there is an arrogance that I can't be touched. And, you know, the British Empire had that arrogance. The sun never sets on the British Empire, and it set. So I think if we realize that we live in a powerful world full of energy, and that energy is a creative energy of the universe. And our power is the spiritual power of aligning ourselves, which we call Rita and the right action. You know, that's what Dharma is. Aligning yourself with that power. Then we are very powerful. And these people who think they are beyond all accountability can be brought to account. We just have to ensure that none of us allow our ego to overtake us. None of us allow hate and division to become the way we start to think. And third, none of us ever give up the power we have.
Well, so Bill Gates has done something with his decision to keep the patent on the IP of the Pfizer vaccine, right? He is playing God. He is using his money to levy his decisions, and his decisions being, whether or not villages in the global south get vaccines. If they are able to take the IP of these vaccines, develop their own, and work towards global vaccination. That is Bill Gates doing what he likes to do. He likes to play God with his money. He does it all the time. He's done it in India and Indonesia specifically. He has chosen to try to end malaria. He gets that title. All right? He gets to sit on this throne. The biggest, yes, and it's because we need and rely so heavily on philanthropy in this world, because we don't have the necessary system in place to appropriately extract the wealth from the billionaire class that would otherwise allow us to grow a more equitable, better functioning society based on universal programs, ending imperialism, working together with countries in a way that helps every single country, not developing countries and the exploitation of the global south to maintain these magnets, these empires, like we have in the United States, like we have in China, like we have with France and Britain, where they all they have some sort of vehicle in the global south that helps fuel their empires. Still to this day, the United States being the worst offenders. Obviously. They're up there. But Bill Gates is a great exemplar. He is the person who comes to mind who has both used his money to make major structural change, but also he has been incredibly villainous in his refusal to advocate for the taxation on him and his fellow billionaire members of the billionaire class. He maintains those class interests, but still turns around and plays God as like the perfect philanthropist who is seemingly not as stingy with their money. Not when it comes to vaccinating the entirety of the planet. And that is what we are going to see in the wake of climate change and disaster that will ensue. And that has already started to ensue. But so is extortion. Bill Gates saw, going back to this, Bill Gates saw the ramifications that releasing the intellectual property on this vaccine would have to his own share in Pfizer. So because it would have hindered his profit margins, he decided, because he had invested so much money in the Pfizer vaccine, he was given the opportunity to decide on whether or not the Pfizer vaccine would be released for future development. That is what I mean when I say that Bill Gates plays God. If it suits him financially, or if it will help broaden his public image, he will do an act of kindness that we have never seen before. But if it could ostensibly hurt his bottom line with another endeavor, he will. And he did. So yeah, it was his decision to sit on the COVID vaccine that will lead to thousands, hundreds of thousands of more deaths. But he still gets that applause because he decided to use some of his money to end malaria in some regions of the world. In short, fuck Bill Gates. And if he is also making these future decisions on how to handle climate change apartheid, I hope that he has mercy on the people in the global south who are going to be first to go. If he is the one, like, you know, investing in like whatever climate change related technology that might come about, the closer that we get to irreparable climate change disaster, and then maybe that will start to, you know, incentivize us to find some sort of mechanism or implement some sort of last ditch effort to save this planet with like our first like real like globalized policy that would be implemented, you know, at the highest level. I guess we'll see. Anyway.
We are powerful beings in a powerful world.
We are powerful beings in a powerful world. What does Russell Brand have to say about this?
I like the thing you said about the sort of the arrogance, you know, the of the colonial arrogance, and just the perhaps unconscious phrasing of the sun never setting on the British Empire, and the indication.
Is Russell Brand based? Yeah, it's pretty based, I'd say.
Of an unawareness of shadow, unawareness of inhered darkness. I wondered too, Vandana, if you know, when you're saying that thing about the unaccountability of Bill Gates and how that kind of mimics this kind of monotheistic, authoritative deity, a kind of a deity that asserts power and dominion, how this motif is recurrent historically. I wonder if in a theology with a different origins, such as
gives off Marianne
pantheistic ideas in Vedas and Mahabharata, if there are, you find ideals that mobilize, for example, divine feminine power or spiritual principles that are plainly neglected in this materialistic ideology?
Well, I think the first very important gift of the Vedas is to recognize that the universe is divine. The smallest grass, the tiniest rivulet is an expression of the divine. And that's why it's not an accident. You know, we hold our rivers as sacred, except that now with industrialism and urbanization, we are polluting them. Our trees, our tulsi, the seeds. And can you imagine, this is so touching to me. When I go to the villages, women will do sacred ceremonies with indigenous seed. They will never use a hybrid seed for a sacred ceremony. For sacred ceremony with animals, they will only use the indigenous cows with the hump. They will never use a Jersey cow. It's quite amazing. No one told them, but they have that understanding of integrity. And what does sacred means? It means to treat without violation, to hold the integrity. So we live in a divine universe, and the energy of this universe is a divine feminine, Shakti, we call her Shakti. And nature, Prakriti, is her first action. And that's why, even though
Thank you, Kelly.
we have, we've said Maya as play, but not Maya as an illusion. Maya as play when you realize you're in a sacred universe. But the part that has always been a very, very powerful idea from the Upanishad, it's from the Isha Upanishad. And this Upanishad, the first para says, we live in a sacred universe, which is for the well-being of all. Enjoy her gifts without greed. Taking more than your share is theft. So they have defined as theft, taking more than your share, which is why India for 10,000 years lived a very high level of living without taking from anyone else. But it wasn't just as a civilization, each individual. And we never adopted anthropocentrism because we had all these antidotes, that we are part of a web of life. We are part of one earth family. And I'm very, it's that thinking. And where did I get it? I didn't begin with the texts, Russell. I began with my life in the villages where ordinary women were practicing this. So, my course, they're saying this, let me go read a text. I went to the text following the practice of very ordinary people. That's why when people say, oh, India's now a consumerist culture, I said, you're looking at that thin slice of consumerism. There's an ocean out there that is only surviving because they're spiritual beings. Millions had to go home on the day of the lockdown of the corona. You might have seen the march of the migrant workers. They could not have walked 1,000 miles without a deep, deep resolve within them and a deep sense of their inner resources and not giving up hope. Otherwise, they'd be committing suicide in the city. They did not commit suicide. They walked with babies in their arms. I think the other part,
where did they go, chat?
Is extremely important because, see, part of the dualisms that have been created are the idea that there's spirituality and there's materialism, right? But India and her thinking and her Vedas and her Upanishads have constantly sacralized the material world. So, because I work on food now over the last 36 years, not through choice, I did my PhD on non-separability in quantum theory, and it's 84 and Punjab and Bhopal that made me look at agriculture. Why were we practicing agriculture in a way that kills thousands in Bhopal and 30,000 people in Punjab? Where does this violence come from? And I wrote The Violence of the Green Revolution. And since then, I've been going deeper and deeper into the food question. And I just want to share 2 or 3 of the really inspiring parts.
If I went by this lady's description, India is a paradise. No. You're misconstruing the practices of rural Indian farming, right? With the injustices. India is home to some of the most dilapidated, non-conforming structures that she briefly touched on that has been referred to the subaltern class. We have discussed this at length. We've kind of gone over a few material to look at the way in which some of the biggest cities, like Mumbai, for example, has been completely segregated in terms of who lives in the formal, planned, controlled economy that is city proper, and then who lives in the subaltern classes, usually in the alternative structures or the alternative communities that are called shanty towns, dare I say slums, and this is not paradise. This is the will of a very strong people who are incredibly resilient, who find a way to create a new world for themselves, a new trade-based economy, a structureless society that at least Indian-type favelas, yes, they are informal settlements. They are often the only place where you can live if you are unable to afford to live within a city proper, which, based on severe income inequality, is not an opportunity afforded to everyone. Obviously, that's why you have literally millions of people living in the slums of Mumbai instead of the city proper of Mumbai. Consumerism has blinded most of you to the truth. The caste system is mostly practiced by the rich, who are the upper caste. Yeah, I'm sure that if you ask those who are falling below the uber rich on this, Indian-based social hierarchy, this socioeconomic hierarchy, they don't want to be part of this caste system. They don't want to be cast out of, their place of origin. Some people just have no choice. Oh, thank you. Is it balloon?
of a sacred relationship with food, which is what they want to break right now. It's been broken partly with industrialism, but now with the digitalization, they would like to end it forever. And that's where we can recover it. So the first is everything is food. Everything is food in the Vedas. And if you think of it ecologically, what is the nutrition cycle? But the movement of food. So everything is food. Yeah, an ecological cycle is the movement of food, and that's why I call food the currency.
There's no
of
such
life.
thing as karma.
Second, the
I don't believe
highest
it.
beauty is to grow and give good
Too many
food
evil
in
people
abundance.
get away with so much
It's your
in this
dharma.
world.
It has been put into our dharmic text, into the Mahabharata, into the Taittiriya Upanishad. And the worst sin is to let someone go hungry in your neighborhood, not grow good food, and worse, serve bad food. So we've got to bring to the center of our everyday life the rituals that make life sacred. Our breath.
Use karma
why
as
is
a philosophy,
pranayama
though?
so important? Why is breath so important? Because breath is what connects us to the world.
It's interesting, karma as a philosophy. If you are trying to find a way to live, if you're going to maybe take principles of the golden rule, and if you want to try to use the, preemptively use the outcome of karma to try to do right because of the fear of what could come back to you threefold in your decision making, in your practicing of higher consciousness, then okay. But again, there are so many evil motherfuckers who get away with so much in this world. I no longer believe that karma is real, even though I use exactly this idea that maybe, for whatever reason, the imbalance of the universe will somehow punish me. And I will feel what has happened threefold. And still have to watch somebody who is so fucking evil get away with so fucking much while I feel like I am repenting for my baby sins. That in and of itself makes me still practice good behavior as much as humanly possible by refusing to believe that karma is real or that it applies to everyone equally and timely. Timely is the fucking word that I'm thinking about.
Water connects us to the world. Food connects us to the world. These are not fuels, Food as a fuel for a machine that's called the body. This Cartesian construct has so outlived its time, and the digital barons are trying to give it a little longer life. They're putting their foot on the accelerator, say, go more Cartesian. And we have to
What
say,
is time
no,
and time
go more
even?
spiritual, go more interconnected, go
Alright.
more celebratory through the abundance we can create.
Excuse me, because I've actually found the conversation very, very moving in ways that I didn't anticipate. Do you feel, and is this even a kind of, is even this critique, if not reductive, somewhat abstract to a separate philosophical narrative, i.e., do you feel that you have a somewhat Rousseauian regard for pre-colonial India, which surely must have been beset with its own forms of feudalism and the caste system, for example? And if you feel that India, that's only experienced this form of colonization relatively recently and is suffering so radically, what hope is there for new world companies and old nations, old white European nations, if it is so deeply, if these ideas are so deeply embedded and the extraction of the sacred so endemic and historic? Or do you feel that, like you said, our species is young and these cultural differences are therefore all quite recent, and perhaps the reversal and reawakening and re-engaging of these sacred principles might be possible at a kind of comparable, consistent and in tandem? Is it possible that such different cultures with seemingly different challenges can have commensurate goals and can form alliances in support of one another? From what ideological template are we to draw? From what archetypes are we to engage, and are there distinctions? And yes, do you what do you say about the earlier part of the question about like pre-colonial India and the ideals and presumably contradictions that were present. If you enjoyed that video, then you should have a look at the rest of my conversation with Vandana Shiva. It's on Luminary, which is $2.99 a month, which I know is money, but it's worth it. Coming up, we've got Edward Snowden on the show. We've got Jordan Peterson. Who else?
You have Jordan Peterson on the show? Why?
Bill Gates is coming on. I'm joking, Bill Gates ain't coming on. But it's a great podcast. Under the Skin on Luminary. Subscribe. Link in the description. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. If you want to hear the rest of it, and believe me, it's really worth it, join me over
The Jordan Peterson episode was great. What did they talk about?
The latest episodes of
it's gonna be annoying. Like, obviously, like if Peterson is coming on to Russell Brand's show, I'm sure that Russell Brand treats him with hospitality, right? Probably like Nazis and. I'm curious. Did you rewatch it? Rewatch it? What?